All right, everybody, welcome to the BizDad recap episode. This week, we're going to be talking all about fatherhood, as being a father, being a dad is like the number one thing for me in the world. I love being a dad. I love talking about it. So please just listen to this recap episode from all these amazing fathers that we've had on the podcast this year. I really hope that you enjoy and get some nuggets out of this. If you hear something that strikes your fancy, that you're just saying, hey, I really want to learn more about this person, jump back to the full episode, listen to the whole thing. We have some amazingly insightful dads who have some great advice for you to be able to pull from and learn from. So please jump back, listen to the full episode, take notes, and please reach out if you have any questions for me or anything. So please enjoy this episode on fatherhood, and we'll have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you guys all in the new year.
My son Pierce asked me a couple of weeks ago, and I picked up a new Gladiator truck, and I had it wrapped, I had some work done to it. So I'm like, come on, Pierce, come get the truck with me. So we're driving back, and he doesn't really talk that much. He's 15. So it's, hey, Pop, what's your worst fear? I'm like, wow, what a great opportunity to have a dialogue.
No joke.
I'm like, you know what, Pierce? If you would have asked me that question when I was your age, probably into my early mid-20s, I would have said fear of failure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That would have been my worst fear of failure. But honestly, through my research and studying, I think that some of the most influential peak performers in the world, and even the men and women I coach and my own entrepreneurial experience, failure is actually an ingredient to success.
It sure is.
To fail in order to succeed. Without it, I don't see it possible. Nor do I want to study anyone that was like just landed on Success Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn from people that went through adversity, had challenges, like went through pain and whatever, and then became victorious, right? So honestly, you have to embrace fear. Now, I know we're not going to correct, but I told him you want to make fear your witch.
Yeah.
But you own it, okay? Yeah. Embrace it, okay? I said, if you make a mistake and you don't learn from that mistake, then you're an idiot. Now, if you can't embrace failure and keep that temporary failure as a part of embrace it, it's a part of life, then go get some kind of 9-to-5 job, punch in, punch out, don't think, and that's cool, man. If that's your definition of success, that's great. I go, but if you ask me why my worst fear is right now, it's plateauing in life, becoming complacent. That's my worst fear. And to be clear, growth isn't always financial for me, like income-wise. It could be another piece of property. It could be my spiritual connection to God. It could be how I improve as a husband, right? Mm-hmm. How I am as a dad, what my fitness is like, but almost 50 years old, or I'm a physique competitor. People are like, why are you doing that? Life is more than about having abs. First of all, I like to have abs. That is a part of it. I'd be lying if it wasn't. But you have no clue why I train. Like, abs aren't the reason why.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Those are some really deep, I psychoanalyze myself deeply for reasons why I do things. And I use them, I like to think, as triggers for me to be better every day. That's a grimace that he calls ill shin, right?
I'm going to take a selfish moment here. What kind of thought process can I pass on to these boys that gives the same ideas with different language? Because the language we use with our kids helps create that wireframe I talked about before. I want them to look at it from a positive light and not a negative one.
It's a great question. I'm still learning. I'm in the teenage phase. Our daughter has really embraced the lifestyle thinking that my wife Gina and I have, right? Mm-hmm. Really has. And she also, when we were living in New York, and she's a theater person. She sings, she acts, like that's her passion. But she also became an instructor in our Taekwondo program. So she was like engulfed into our leadership course. She became an instructor. She formed a really powerful identity. And our son, he was the kid in my martial art class that was always trying to get my attention in a negative way.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yeah.
He's a lacrosse player, which is fine. I love the sport as long as he has something, right? So to answer your question, I'm still learning because I'll be totally transparent. If I'm Batman, he's Joker. You follow me? I think at times, sometimes wants to be oppositional at this moment, this season of his life. All I could do is set an example and set a standard. right? And my world is, I'm just going to lead by example. I'm going to lead in my fitness. I'm going to lead in my connection to God and how I operate as a Christian. I'm going to lead on how I treat my wife and how I lead and how I treat my mom and my dad, my family, how I treat clients, what I represent. And I will continuously raise my personal standards as a human. And I am praying that he follows that path or a similar path. He does not have to follow. This is weird. There are 3 words that Gina and I constantly tell our kids. And through when you're speaking to men or women, but mostly men I coach, right? Let's just say, when they have some limiting beliefs, or I call them paralyzing paradigms, of things that kind of maybe were challenges from their childhood, it always came back to what their dad didn't do, their mom didn't do. You follow me?
Yeah.
So the 3 words that I always say is, regardless, I love you, I am proud of you, I am grateful you're my child. Now, I will make very clear, Pierce, I love you, I just don't like you right now. I just don't like you right now. You know, he would also say, what, am I a disappointment? No, you're not a disappointment. I'm disappointed in how you acted today or what you did. That's not what Melellas do. That's not what Melellas do. You're a Melella. It's almost like the Lion King. Look in the reflection. Remember who you are. You're a Melella. Yeah. You're a winner. You're loved. You're successful. Like I got videos of my kid in the mirror saying all his I am statements. They come walking down the steps. It says, today's going to be a great day. I'm grateful to be alive. Like we were like drilling these powerful incantations since they were children, right? Most people that I look up to and seek advice that have gone through this season of life, again, mine are teenagers. They always say, listen, you're doing everything right. You have a solid foundation. You're what? Like we're married 23 years together, 28 years. We left my empire in New York during COVID to come here to give my kids a different experience. Mm-hmm. They get that now. We're almost been here almost 3 years. When they do go back up to New York, they have a comparison of their life here compared to there. Remember, my son also experienced COVID at 7th grade, right? So 7th grade, no school, Zoom, our businesses were shut. We had a traumatic experiences of like fear, anxiety, doubt, the mask thing. We ironically sold our house just because we didn't know what was happening. Like we were selling our house without knowing the world's going to shut down. Yeah. So we were buying these houses on this lake, and then it got kiboshed because people from the city were coming up and paying like $200 grand cash over asking price. Yeah. We lost 5 homes. This is our house. No, it's not. This is our house. No, it's not. Like our businesses were shut. Like stress levels are high. Living with my in-laws. And then I'm like, screw it. Babe, getting Jeep. Where are we going? South Carolina. Have you been to South Carolina? Nope. I heard it's cool. Right? And we came here, and then I saw what it was like, and then I'm like, come back. Like, we bought land, we're building a house, right? So I hope that they know that Gina and I have made tremendous amounts of sacrifices for their life experience. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that they hear this constantly. I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm grateful for your kids. Your family first, Jesus first, health first, not first, but it's all encompassed in Gina and I's value system. Those are the most important. Our faith, obviously, our fitness, family, finances. But the messages of just saying that you're loved, you're a winner. I remember since they were little kids, I would put them on the bus, and I'm like, be a leader, right? I would always say to them, right? But I'm still learning that. Again, our daughter's going to graduate high school. Most likely 90% should be going to Clemson University. That's basically where we're going to probably end up going. And we're still working on it with Mr. Pierce, but
yeah. I think that tends to be the case with a lot of fathers and sons anyways. Like there's that point, and boy, it might have even been Anthony, or I was talking to him on the podcast. I can't remember, but I think it was him. where he was talking about the first 5 years of a kid's life is your turn to do the discipline and do all this stuff and teach them so that the next years you can mold them into where you want them to be. And then the years after that, you can just be their mentor, their guide as they're going through life. And there's also on a similar transition, there's the moment, especially with our sons or with our dads, and depending on how you're looking at it, is you adore your dad, like he's everything to you, and then all of a sudden you like disdain your dad, like he's everything you don't want to see in a father. And then later on, you learn to appreciate who your dad was and what they actually did for you. And I know that it's a cliche, but it's also a cliche for a reason, because that you can see the habit, they see the pattern in almost every father-son relationship. Like it's so difficult. There's that point where the son just does not like the dad, and I don't understand why.
I don't have that answer.
Prevent it.
I'm in it now. Okay. All I will say is this: what Gina and I focusing on is what we want to see happen. It's not easy because you get distracted when you're in the you know what, and it's hard, and it's like testosterone's flying. He's 15, 16, and he wants to be with his friends. He's working, school, and all. And it's a different world right now, right? But here's the deal: he's healthy, he's alive, he's an athlete. He comes to church with me every now and then. Like just last week, he slept over his friend's house, and he showed up. He showed up late, but then he sat next to me, and it just warmed my heart. I want him in that environment. And he's respectful to other people. And every now and then he's maybe not that respectful to Gina and I at times. But again, he's at that stage. But what we do visualize is the outcome of our relationship. And Gina keeps on saying that. And she's really better at it than I, because sometimes I get distracted and sometimes when I get clouded and I can't really see the vision at times. But then we do our best to create magical experiences. I'll give you an example. My kids like this band, Mountain Joy. I don't know if you've heard of this band before. Joy. And it's like a Fish, Grateful Dead. I don't know if they're Christian band, but anyway, when they're in the kitchen and that band is playing, they're both singing, they're hanging out, and they're sharing the lyrics. And I'm like, wow, look at this. Like they're like getting along, and then this music's bringing them together. So I Googled Mount Joy, and I saw that they were playing here in South Carolina, and ended up surprising them. Like, yo, we're all going to go to a Mount Joy concert. You know what I mean? And they loved it. And we went in and we did a concert together. Actually, we're going to go see a Christian performer, Lauren Daigle, in 2 weeks out here in South Carolina. And then we have Mount Joy tickets again. And then 2 weeks ago, we went to the Clemson game, right? All together. We tailgated and went to the game, and I am doing as much. And then growing up, man, we went snowboarding. They grew up on Stone Mountain, Vermont every season. Last year, now we're going out to Park City, Utah. So I do our best to create magical experiences so they can remember the things that Gina and I did with them, right? And what we're focusing more on right now is creating those magical experiences. And Kiana, our daughter, just today, so we're recording this the day after Thanksgiving. So Wednesday night, the day before Thanksgiving, we had some neighbors come over, and my wife was waxing some of the neighbors, and they were breaking out wine and wax, and my daughter was hanging out with us, and she was hanging out with all the adults, and we loved it. Just the other day, Kiana she's a theater geek. She starts singing, and we just sat in the living room and listened to her sing, and we're embracing all these little experiences. And I think that's what I'm really focusing on now, is creating as much experiences as possible. What we also do is we create these one-on-one date nights for the kids. They get one a month with Gina and or I. So Pierce likes shooting guns. So I go out to the range with a couple of my buddies who were ex-police officers, and we'll shoot guns. Our daughter, she likes to go thrift shopping downtown Charleston, or we just went to the movies with her. We saw the Hunger Games movie that she wanted to do. One day she was like, Dad, do you want to go to Starbucks with me and then draw? I'm like, yeah, let's do that. We would get sketches and we're drawing, listen to classical music at Starbucks. At Barr, what's the bookstore? Barnes and Noble. And just doing those one-on-ones on things that they want to do. I think that's key. And then constantly just letting them know that we love them. And then that's what Grandmaster Kim says. You have to continue to love no matter what. Always loving them, no matter what.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing my best to do, man. Lead by example. The big thing in our family that I've found in the time in between being, I guess, a teenager working and then being a real estate professional working, is I always felt like it was too much business in our family. There wasn't the family part. And so when you're working for your family all the time, it feels like you're always working. And so the discussions around, I guess there's different times, like for a part of my adult life, I enjoyed having business conversations all the time because I was really into that. And maybe that was before kids because I was just trying to suck up all the information from my folks. But in reality, as I got older and I started having my kids, I craved and yearned for more of the family relationship with my father, not always the business. And I think that was always, and still is to this day, a little bit of a struggle. Like, where does the family business, and I'm not in and we can get to how I'm related to the family business today. It's a little bit different because I got fired in 2018, which we should go into that too, from the family business. And so as I get older and have my own children and I want the relationship with my father as a father, not as a partner or not as a business mentor or as a leader or a business guy I look up to. It's funny, that's how that's changed over time. And as I've gotten older and how my own relationship with my children, and to this day, it's very important to me to maintain that father-son relationship, not the partner with my children, because my children today are partners or investors with me. And so it's very important to me to today to really put the family relationship, the father-son, in front of the business part of my world. Very important to me these days.
What kind of foundations have you set, or did you wish you set deeper in your kids' life to prepare them for some challenges?
Really, my goal, I want to give them the tools to be independent humans. And hopefully I've prepared them with enough of those tools that they can flap their wings and fly and be on their own and know that if they get in trouble, I'm here. And just trying to maintain that, not being too much of a friend but maintain that. To me, it's important that they have that open line of communication, that they feel comfortable coming to me. And I've read some great books about how to be a good father, Untangled, Tangled, I think is the name, or Untangled. Love that book. And how to communicate with your daughter. And because it's a different conversation with the daughter than it is with the son, right? And I've tried to realize that it's two different people, and making sure that if something happens to my daughter, I told her the other day, I'm not so concerned about the decisions that you make, because I know you're a smart girl and we've talked and we have an open conversation. I'm concerned about the drunk friend of a friend that comes over and makes a bad decision, and know that you can always pick up the phone and call me. I'm not going to judge. I just want you to be safe, and your safety is the most important thing, right? That's a little bit of a different conversation with the boys, right? Understanding what conversation you're having with each one is a little bit different, right? And the discussion with my 17-year-old son, it's, hey man, no is no, and don't make that decision, and don't be one of those guys, and you're going to succumb to peer pressure to do stupid things, because you don't want to be that guy that I'm telling your sister about, right? You don't want to be that drunk guy that's doing stupid things over at it's just different conversations that we have with them and understanding. And so no, I do want them to go off and be independent people. And whether it's a challenge in sports, I want you to handle that. I'm not many times as my wife, or I want to pick up and call the soccer coach because blah, 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 didn't happen. No, you've got to handle that on your own. That's how you become a man, and that's how you become an adult. We're just here we can be a sounding board, but you got to handle that, and you got to have that difficult conversation. That's how you grow. I can't hover over you and do that for you. No, you got to do that.
Yeah. Our family motto, basically, it's not officially written down, but it's stay calm and work through the problem. Whatever the problem is, just stay calm and work through the problem. And one of my business partners, he and I have both been through some stuff where we're like, hey, ain't nobody dying today, right? There's no problem here today where somebody's getting shot at. I got no bullets flying over my head. There's nobody going to die today. We can figure this out. It's extremely important to me to make sure that my kids know that regardless, I'm always there for them. I will always be there for them. But it doesn't mean you can't try to figure something out yourself. And man, I don't know. It's a difficult thing to balance too.
It's hard to let your children fail once in a while.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good, but it's okay to have adversity. And I always try to find the good and the gap in the gain, right? Hey, it's okay. Our situation, let's have a little gratitude. Our situation, whether it's soccer or we're doing okay here. Like, you have to play a lot. And just because they didn't play 100% of the game doesn't make it bad. It's okay. We're doing okay. Like, It doesn't have to be perfect, and we're not keeping score. The scorecard thing is crazy that kids do, right? Like, he gets so and I get this and this. It's like teaching them not to keep the scorecard, right? Like, life isn't perfect. Life isn't always fair. And we keep the scorecard between husband and wife sometimes. It's that doesn't help anything. And teaching the kids not to keep the scorecard. It's not even Steven all the time. And sometimes the even Steven in the family was always tough. And it isn't. Life isn't always fair. And it's okay to teach your kids that, because it isn't.
Ain't that the truth? There's a friend of ours, she always tells her kids, fair is what you pay to get on the bus. That's the only fair that we have, right? That's what you pay to get on the bus. But you made me take a note. I gotta read The Gap in the Gain again. I just have to get back into that. That's such a phenomenal book. And I want to, they should make a Gap in the Gain for kids. And maybe I should just reach out to them and write it for them, because what a phenomenal book that is.
Totally.
I love it. So if anybody listening has not listened to The Gap in the Gain, I can't remember who wrote it.
I think I said that thing about Ben Hardy. Yeah. Ben Hardy and somebody. Yeah. Like sometimes I just go into Audible and put on The Gap in the Gain and listen to a couple chapters, right? Like just to touch back, a little flyby into it, just to get a little bit, because it's so good to put that perspective into your life. And I have that. I talk about The Gap in the Gain with the kids. Just let's live in the game. We're all right, man. It's all right.
I have this sort of delusional belief that if I work 20 years in my 30s, so I work 80 hours a week when everybody else is working 40, that when I'm in my 40s, I can work 10 hours or 10 years in my 40s, and then in my 50s, I won't have to work at all. And so one of the things I'm focused on is like still being committed to my kids. So like last week, my daughter's, will you take me to school? And the answer was yes. Clear the schedule, move a call, move this, do the call earlier, whatever it might be. Like if I can't find 40 minutes in my day to take my daughter to school, I've got an issue. Dad, will you pick us up? Sure, I'll pick you up. Whatever I have to do. Now there's of course days where it's no, I can't. I'm so sorry. But it's never no, I can't. It's, hey, today is really not going to work for me, but how about Wednesday? Oh yeah, Wednesday, right? And I just try to always say yes to them. Now it's not always yes directly, but I always try to get them to the end result of what they're looking for, which is, hey, Dad, we really want you to take us to school. Cool, I'm in, right? And that's the fortune, that's the benefit of having your own business or being a leader inside of businesses, is you can create your own schedule. And so like my team knows if I got the morning blocked off for my kids, we keep it blocked off.
As your kids grow up, have you thought about, okay, once they're actually school age, are you going to be doing homeschool? Have you thought through how you want to do hiring a personal teacher? What are your thoughts on that? And how has the conversation face to face with your wife been on that?
Yeah, we just started having it. Our daughter's 4. She goes to a school right now 4 days a week, and next year's like the kindergarten age where she's we're gonna have to make a decision. Man, I'm stubborn. I'm stuck in my ways. Like traditional school worked for me. Like I hated the testing. I hated the standardized testing. I hated sitting at a desk, but it taught me discipline. It taught me grit, determination. It taught me how to overcome things. And then it taught me how to like figure out how to get what I want in a group of people. It's a long way of saying we haven't really come up with a decision yet. There's definitely benefits to homeschooling. There's definitely benefits to traditional schooling. There's definitely benefits to private schooling. There's definitely cons to all 3 of those things. And that's just a conversation we'll have. And ultimately we'll lean on our kids to let them decide. Now you got to steer them a little bit and guide them. But the last thing I want to do is put my daughter in a place or a school that she resents me for. So I want her to feel good in the environment. If it's like, hey, Dad, I really like this little private school. Cool. We'll stay there. If it's, hey, Dad, I don't want to do school at all. Obviously, that's not negotiable. You're going to go to school. But if it's like, hey, I really want to do homeschooling and travel around the world for, 2 years, and they're 12 and 10, cool, let's do it. I want them to have a voice in the journey. Now we'll guide it, we'll steer it, but I want to make it a part of their decision too, and not just tell them this is the way it's going to be.
Okay. So we chose private school at first, but I'm curious because obviously like a kindergarten, first grade, second grade, how much input you feel like you're going to receive from them versus how much steering you think you're going to need to do on that. Obviously it's
Here's what I'll tell you. I think our kid give us way more input than we recognize. I think they give it through nonverbal cues. And I think we as adults are programmed to think that all feedback is verbal. If I take my daughter to a new school and I see her energy and her body get all nervous, I'll be like, cool, you should be nervous. This is new. And as she meets kids, if she opens up, as she starts playing with them, as she gets in the car and asks questions about them and stuff, it's okay, cool. Like she's giving me the cue that she's interested and she's curious. If she gets in the car and starts crying and says, I miss Lily and Reed and all those friends, cool. She's telling me where she wants to go. I'm not necessarily looking for her, Dad, I want to go here and here's why. I'm looking for her energy. I'm looking for her body. I'm looking for how she shows up. I'm looking for how her energy feels when she's around me. And we'll try to find that right match. And like the beautiful thing about life is if we make the wrong decision, we can always go to something else. Like nothing is written in stone. Nothing is finalized. The worst thing that happens is we lose a little bit of money. Life will go on. And so I think, hey, if this feels right to all of us and she's excited, cool. If 2 weeks in, I miss my old friends. I miss my old school. Cool, we'll go back. 2 weeks in, she's at the old school. She's like, hey, I want to try something new. Cool, we'll try something new. Like, it's okay. Life is all about choice and trying to avoid the judgment around it. Like it's such a polarizing topic and it feels so heavy, like all things right now being discussed in the world. Like whatever you choose to do with your kids is awesome. Whatever I choose to do with my kids is awesome. Let's be curious and see how we can, hey, I learned this. Did you learn that? Like, and let's just share. We don't need to reside in judgment. We need to do the same for our kids is show them just like reside in curiosity. Both sides can be beautiful and true. And that's okay. One of the rules I have, Adam, is I'll never go home on the phone. So like I'll drive around my neighborhood finishing up a phone call. So when I walk in the house, I'm not on the phone. Because if I walk in the house on the phone, what I'm telling the kids, what I'm telling my wife is this call is more important than you, who I haven't seen all day. So there was times where I like driving around the neighborhood and my wife texts me and says like, why are you driving around the neighborhood? Like, how do you know I'm driving around the neighborhood? Just, if I turn on Find My Friends, I'm like, what's that? I don't even know what that is. But then I responded and said, I'm trying to finish up this call. I want to come in on not distracted and be with the kids. I try to get my phone into the bedroom as quickly as possible when I get home so that it's not in my hands. Now, I'm not perfect. There's days where I have it in my hand at the dinner table. Am I proud of that? No, but I'm human. So I just accept it and recognize it and am aware of how it made me feel. I'm aware of how it maybe made my kids feel. And then I try to choose something different the next time I have that opportunity. I'm just trying to expose my kids to every sport possible. Like our 4-year-old is right now, she's in dance, she plays soccer, and she's in tennis. And when we got her into tennis, she told me on the way there, I hate tennis. And I'm like, oh, really? That's interesting because you've never played. Do you even know what tennis is? And by the end of the lesson, we're so fortunate to have this incredible coach. But by the end of the lesson, she was like, I love tennis. When can I come back? And she had this confidence on the court. She said hi to a 14-year-old girl. And usually she's a little bit more shy. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like we found something where you feel like you can open up. So now we keep going to tennis and she loves that. And she's pouring into that. Like, she says she hates soccer, but last week she scores 3 goals, comes running over like she wins the World Series or the World Cup. Let's keep it soccer. She comes running over. She's thrilled. She celebrates. She's having a blast. And so my job is just to show her what's possible. Same with my son. He's in soccer already. We're going to get him into gymnastics just so he can climb more and have more fun. I was a wrestler and a soccer player growing up. I think there's really good things about team sport. I think there's really good things about individual sport. And so I love that she likes soccer. She says she doesn't, but she does. She likes soccer. She likes dance. I love that she loves tennis. And again, like, I believe my job as a parent is to open up as many doors as I can. And when she chooses something, just to push as hard as I can to bring whatever opportunity she wants her way. Now, I'm not going to want it more than she does. So do I want her to be good at soccer? Yeah, I played soccer growing up. It's cool to see your kids score. But at the end of the day, if she starts not wanting it, she doesn't want to go to practice, she starts fussing, she doesn't want to put on her cleats, she doesn't want to put on her shin guards, I'm not going to want it more than her. Now, I'll make sure she gets through that commitment she made because that's one of my wife and I's deals, but I can't want it harder than her. We were at tennis the other day and right before my daughter's lesson, there was a guy asking about his 6 or 7-year-old son. He's like, how do you do? And all this stuff. And like, how does he compare to that number 2 kid in nationals that you're working with? And just put the coach in such a weird position. And yet the kid's like looking at his phone playing Pokemon. I'm like, yeah, I wanted to look at the dad and go, dude, it doesn't matter because he doesn't care. He doesn't want it. And that's okay. Just use it as a way to get exercise, improve his hand-eye coordination. If he wanted to be the best in the world at 6, 7, he'd already be asking the coach the questions. What can I be doing? What can I be practicing? Where can I be going? All this stuff. I'm like, dude, you can't want it more than your kid. And the coach even said to me when the dad left, man, it just kills me. The dad wants it so bad. His kid just wants to come out here and have fun.
Walk me through that, what that means to you right now, right? You've got 2 daughters, a beautiful wife. What does that mean for you? If you're looking at this saying, your 2 daughters are very young, right? What does that look like saying, okay, I know death is obviously there, right? It's hopefully a thing that's 70 years in the future, not anytime soon. But what does that cause you, or have you really thought through what that means on what you're doing with your life today to, not to prepare, but because you know of the inevitability?
Yeah, such a great question. And I do think about this a good amount. And I think it's like, you had those moments, and we were just talking about this, where like you are just eternally happy, like inside, you can just feel how happy you are, like just enjoying those like amazing moments, like where 2 weeks ago, I put my first daughter to bed. She fell asleep on my chest in the chair. I put her to bed. Then the second daughter came in and fell asleep on my chest. I put her to bed. Just like those types of moments, and just like understanding like that there are like collecting those. That's really all that matters. And that we might not get them like forever and ever, but understanding like the importance of each one of those, and just feeling grateful for that, I think is really the key. And there's no guarantees, but I think if we're enjoying those, if we're enjoying life and like really what is, and it's full and like purposeful, like it doesn't really, whether we die tomorrow or in 100 years. So yeah, another great book, great author, Antoine Saint-Exupéry. He was a pilot in World War I. There's a book called Wind, Sand, and Stars, and it talk about it a lot too, because they were flying the males in Africa and over the Andes, and they talk a lot through that. And it's just, I think if you're living on purpose, it doesn't, the time of death doesn't matter.
Yeah. But I love that's, I typically go to the, what is your why? And if you're chasing your why and you're striving towards that all the time, and that a true why, and I think that's one, not to keep my hand on the military side of the house, but there's the statistic that's always thrown out there. There's 22 veterans a day that are committing suicide. And one of the things that we look at from our perspective, and in my education company, and just as a veteran as a whole, is you have to have a goal in life. You have to have a purpose. In the military, there was always, your purpose was given to you all the time. Your mission was given to you. Your purpose was given to you. You chase it, you chase it. And when you're out, if you don't have something beyond that, it's similar in business, where if you're only chasing a successful exit of a company, what happens when that company exits? What are you chasing anymore? You have to have a lot more behind it. Your purpose in life can't be the dollar bills in your bank account. The purpose in life can't be the exit of a company. There's got to be something deeper. And those moments, you just said it, the same thing right before we started recording. I was telling you the same thing for me last night. My little daughter falling asleep on my chest. And I was like, I'm not even going to bed right now. I just want to enjoy this moment, to just sit here and enjoy the fact that my little girl's breathing on my chest, sleeping. That's so much more purpose to me than any dollar bill that's in my bank account. And I love the way you say that.
Yeah. And a big thing for me too is to remind myself a lot. So I put my daughters to bed, and I don't know, maybe I put them 50% of the time, 70% of the time. I don't know, my wife and I rotate around, but there's a lot of those times and those days where there's so much stuff going on. There's huge work, or maybe it's like, hey, I just want to bed down or watch Netflix or whatever. There's something else, and you're right, putting your kid to bed, and in my case, putting my daughter to bed. And maybe it's taking longer as you want to read more books. And I always remind myself, even all that stuff, like in reality, there's no place in the world I would rather be than right here. And I'll always, that is the truth. Like in 5 years, I'm going to look back like, hey, those were like the best moments. And I always remind myself, like, anytime I'm really with my daughters and with my family, there's no place I'd rather be right now. Like, this is 100% the most important time, the most important place for me to be present. Whatever, the work, the TV, the stuff doesn't matter. Like that, we can do that later, but focus on this is the most important place to be right now. And I just have to, I literally will like remind myself, I'll tell myself that, and then it just resets my brain. Like, all right, I'm back. So that's just a really big thing that's helped me just, I think, just be more present when the days are crazy.
What is one of your top goals for your family, and why did you choose that as a top goal for your family?
Yeah, one of them, which we implemented, is we rented a house in Park City for the month of February.
Oh, nice.
And really wanted to ski with my family. My dad's coming, my mom's coming, and I wanted to teach my 3-year-old how to, because again, another lifetime activity.
Yep.
So that's a big one, right? I think for us is like being able to do that is a goal. Like being able to do things as a family and do things like set ourselves up, making an investment in our activities for a lifetime. So also the fact that my dad and my wife staying, my father-in-law are going to be there, like teaching my daughter how to ski, and I'm going to be there teaching her how to ski, and I'm going to strap my 1-year-old to my chest and ski. That's going to be awesome. Yeah, that's going to be freaking awesome. And also, like I have work to do. Like I got to figure out how to do that. But also still run the funds, make sure I do it. Maybe have to fly back occasionally, to take care of certain things, but I also have to set myself up, put the systems in place so that I can work there, but also spend some hours and feed my family, and then take some days off completely as well, setting myself up for that type of life. And my wife has to do the same thing. We're booking it, we pay our deposit. It's like, all right, now we got to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Like now we got to make sure we can do it. Yeah. Now it's real. There's only one way. Like you got to burn the shit. We're going to figure out how to make this work. And so I think just, creating more opportunities like that, I think is really what we're working on.
I think the statement you made, making an investment for like lifetime type stuff, is you can't go wrong with those types of things for sure. What is one thing that you would love to, maybe rephrase that? What's one thing you never want to have happen? Maybe something that you've seen some other family go through. Maybe it's seen something that you had to experience when you were a kid that you said, I'll never let my kids have to go through this. What is one of those things that maybe you're running away from as opposed to running towards?
I think I was so lucky. I grew up in a loving household where I had unlimited time with my parents. I probably was avoiding it as much as I could, but and I was lucky that my parents are still married by obviously my dad's dad, 5 wives, but on my mom's side, married 60 years and I've been exposed to a lot of really healthy relationships. And I want that to be my life as well. I want my girls I want them to see me as a great standard of a man, right? Yeah. I want them to see me kiss my wife and take care of her and show love and respect. And so I think that's really important that they grow up seeing men as in a really positive light. Yeah. And hopefully we just have a great lifetime relationship. And when they start families, and it's the same thing, it's just great family dynamics. Mm-hmm. And I think the best way to do that is just through actions, not just talking about it, but through action.
How do you see yourself inspiring your daughters?
Yeah, I think it's like having verbalizing dreams, like verbalizing, hey, I really want to do this, and then accomplishing that. I think that's a huge part of it, taking action, and maybe not even always accomplishing it. Maybe it's just taking that action of like, life is more than just, I want to build a company and whatever, sit on the beach. I think it's just like, all right, why do you want to build a company? Or what are these certain steps? Or where do we want to go? How do we want to give, how do we want to align ourselves with cherish? Things like that. I think being able to and it's so much like in a company, right? You want to have a vision and you want to be able to articulate that vision. And if you can do that with your kids for your family, I think that will show that, hey, look, we're inspired, we're driven people, like you can do the same thing.
Yeah. I wrote that down for sure. Verbalizing your dreams and accomplishing them, letting your kids see that. My wife and I write down these goals and we go through these things, but if my kids aren't exposed to why it is or what we built behind it, and I think that's going to help be an example for them. I'm definitely going to take that back and work on that so they could see, because I'm always talking to Adam, especially because he's the oldest, on what his outcomes are for whether it's a golf match, whether it's for school, whether it's for a trip that we're going, whatever it is, what is it that you want out of these so that we could chase it down? But I think I do a poor job of showing that to him on what I'm doing. I think he just sees the monotonous day that daddy has sitting behind his computer all day and not really understanding what that actually means. But
yeah, I think it makes it cool too. We're big on celebrating wins, and instead of all right, celebrate a win, and it's just if they can understand why it's a win, I think that's a really great step.
There are a few of these imaginations podcasts. One of them is kids. It's called Kids Short Stories, and he's actually this guy Jim. He has this channel of multiple podcasts with different, similar but different storylines. And that's just 10-minute stories. My kids actually, when they started listening to that, we listened to hours and hours of that. When we'd go on a drive, they'd ask how long is the drive. And they'd calculate in their head how many of those stories can they listen to, which was a cool. Nice. I was like, that's amazing. We're going on a 30-minute drive and it's 10 minutes. Okay, so we can listen to 3 stories. I'm like, we're going an hour and a half drive. And so,
and what was the name of that? You said Jim was the guy who did it, but what's it called?
It's called Kids Short Stories.
Okay.
And so there's that. And then there's, I remember it's something Kids Curiosity, but that's this father and daughter hosting a podcast and just diving into questions and going deep into answering that question. Also really interesting stuff. PBS has some really good podcasts as well. The Arthur podcast is also something that kids like. There's some podcasts in Hebrew which are not relevant for this audience, but
Well, you never know.
The equivalent of history for kids.
Okay.
I don't have any specific podcasts for that. There are some people out there that I for sure can tell really good, in a good way, like history. And I think history is important.
Yeah, much agreed.
Imagination as well. So there's that. And then there's music that my kids listen to as well in the car. But
Of course.
funny. So we were when I exited the last company, 2018, me and my co-founder and our kids, we all did a road trip. We did a cool road trip in the US, Yellowstone, through Glacier to the Canadian Rockies, then west to Whistler, Vancouver, Victoria Island, down to San Francisco, and then flew to Hawaii. I had this like really cool trip. Like a month into this road trip, like my co-founder asks me, "Hey, so how do you deal with charging the tablets in the car?" I'm like, "Dude, my kids don't have tablets in the car." And he was like, "What did they do the whole time?" I was shocked that he gives his kids tablets in the car like the whole time. And he was shocked that my kids don't have tablets in the car. It was just really funny to see that. Let's pan out. But anyway.
Yeah. We just did a road trip to San Antonio from Florida. And it was one of those that they were on tablets for probably too much of that trip. I try to limit a little bit. Hey, it's time to read a book. It's time to do these things. But I thought to myself, man, we're going to be in the car for 18 hours and let them do something. But here I was listening to podcasts in my headphones, doing everything I can to learn and feed my brain. And it never occurred to me that there's probably podcasts that the kids will enjoy listening to. And what a knucklehead of me. Like, of course, there's podcasts for kids out there too, So now that's, again, selfishly, one of the reasons I asked about the podcast side of the house. I think that would be a lot of fun for the kids to engage in.
So I'm in DC now. We're driving down to Florida in a few days to Southern Florida. It's a 15-hour drive. We're going to split up for a few days. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Well, if you do that in one haul, like in Florida, San Antonio, you did like a few days.
No, not with the kids. No, I've done that haul by myself, but not with the kids. I won't do it. Yeah.
So we need to plan out that as well. But I'll send you some.
All right, sweet. Yeah, and if you're on the West Coast side of Florida, let me know, and I'll try to link up with you. That'd be great. But it sounds like you're staying on the East Coast. I'm in Tampa. Yep.
All right. Well, there's a good crew down there.
Yeah, we've got a solid crew of abundance guys here in Tampa. So I've been enjoying it for sure. So I do want to ask a little bit about you. Obviously, a bit more of a sensitive topic here. Like coming in, you brought your family here now to the U.S. You happened to be in the U.S. when the attack happened in Israel. Walk me through how you have communicated atrocities like that with your children. How do you work through a situation like that with young kids? Like, how much do you expose them to, or how much did you expose them to? How much do you want to? Or do you think that you expose too much, maybe not enough? Let's walk through that a little bit and learn from you.
Sure. So first of all, for context purposes, so we live in Israel and my kids have experienced sirens and rockets falling. And they know what that means. And so so I told you, we flew out to the US for 3 weeks of conferences that I went to, and I didn't want to be with my family. So my wife and kids came with me for those 3 weeks. We made it into a whole trip. So that was cool. A week into that trip, October 7th happened in Israel, which was that horrific attack of kidnapping and killing, whatever, all that really sad stuff. And then simultaneously rockets began coming down all over in southern Israel from Gaza. And they still are. And now also from the north. And so there are two implications of that situation. There's a day-to-day, which is there's a siren, you have to go into the bomb shelter, rockets are falling. And then the second part of it, which you don't feel ongoing, which is the stories of what happened and those atrocities. And obviously my kids, we're here in the States and we tell them, guys, we're not going back at the moment because there's rockets falling, there's a war, there's rockets falling, there's sirens, and so we're going to stay here. We also know that our flights were canceled, and they were. And also because of the business, we're also staying here so that I can continue to work on the business. And so that's all they know about what's happening back home. They don't know anything else. All they know is there's a war, there's rockets falling, and our flights were canceled. And obviously that triggers, wait, are we going to be stuck here forever? Wait, we miss our friends. Can we talk with our friends? Can we go? When are we going to go back? And then it's like navigating those questions and responses. And I think we've been pretty open about it. Yes, we will go back for sure. Yes, there are still rockets falling, but we're safe and we will be safe even if we go back. And so but the downs, and we will go back. So we're going to go back probably in a few weeks after I'm done with conferences here. And then when we go back, they're going to expose to a whole nother level of atrocities, not because we share it with them, but because One, they have friends who have older brothers and sisters who are aware more of what happened. My 7-year-old has kids. He's in 2nd grade, and his friends know that there were kids who were kidnapped from their sleep. And his older brothers also probably know about even more horrific stuff of what they did to other kids. And we shouldn't talk about that here, but they did other horrific stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure they're going to be exposed to that. And Israel, I was told, people driving down highways, there's huge posters now on the main highways of pictures of the kidnapped kids, trying to increase awareness to let's do everything we can to retrieve these hostages. And so even driving down the road and they'll see that. So there's a lot of mixed feelings about going back. I bet. We don't want to expose our kids to this stuff knowingly, but the value of going back and being with friends and family and around that environment is also important. And helping, serving my country is also important. And so this internal conflict of what to do. And we have made a decision, we're going back anyway. And we'll deal with it when we deal with it. I think it's really important for our kids to know that they are safe and they will be safe no matter what. So
yeah, I would imagine there's also a level of teaching some resilience through all of that and learning how to deal with trauma, how to deal with terrible things. I've gone on various different levels of what kind of exposure I want. Right now, I'm able to test it with my oldest, about to turn 9. What level of daddy's previous experiences in his old life can I expose you to for actually learning something, right? There are some horrendous, terrible people in the world. And that's just part of living on this earth, right? It's a terrible part of living on this earth, but it is part of living on this earth.
I don't think there's any part of that sort of decision of going back to create resilience with our kids. That's not the reasoning that we tell each other about going back. Also, and every kid's my kids, I have no idea really why, but they are very fearful. So they're a little they're anxious a little, regardless of the situation. They're afraid to be far away from us. They won't probably if we're on the main floor, they won't go down to the basement. And so there's this fear that they have for some reason. We try to deal with it. For the way I tell my kids, fear is not a bad thing. Fear is a good thing. It's okay. It's okay to have fear. It's okay to be afraid. You should not try to suppress that. You should try to deal with it. Despite the fear, deal with that situation, because when you overcome it, you'll feel so much better.
Yeah.
Right. And my kids, I'll just keep on trying to, it doesn't work all the time. They'll still prevent themselves from doing stuff. Even that logic explanation comes out. I don't want to keep on preaching it. Fear is okay. It's not dealing with it is what you should work on solving. Not getting rid of the fear, but just dealing with the fact that you're afraid. And for me, it's more, the more I expose them to trauma, the more reasons they have to be afraid, and the more difficult it will be to deal with this fear. Because we have friends in Israel, same ages, that are telling their parents, I'm afraid to go to sleep because I'm afraid to be kidnapped.
Yeah.
They don't even know that level of atrocity. I'm going to have to deal with a whole new level of fear. And so I don't feel like I want to deal with that type of resilience to that extent. Okay. But I agree. I think resilience is important. My wife always have this constant debate, and, how much exposure they should have to violence, and what are they allowed and not allowed to watch on TV. And for Halloween, should they have, if they want to buy a gun, should they be able to buy a gun or not buy a gun? Why expose them? So there's this constant debate. And I think it's a very healthy conversation.
Yeah.
Between us, as long as you have that conversation, and she compromises and I compromise, and it's always in the middle there. So I definitely agree with resilience. I'm not sure that exposing to trauma, I think many times exposing to trauma is not a good thing, at least for my kids, because of their current situation anyway. And when they get older, they're going to experience it anyway. Let them get older and then deal with it. And in Israel, everyone gets drafted anyway to the military. So they're going to have to deal with this.
If you're being an intentional father with an intentional wife and partner next to you, I think that it makes a massive difference in a kid's life. So,
we love them. The conversations and things that we have from those are just amazing. And let's be honest, vertigo abundance, those things, I'm very blessed. We're privileged. And I had an interesting conversation with my son, actually, that thing I was talking about that I took him to that charity nonprofit organization thing. I said, hey, Colin, you never asked for name brand anything. He wants to throw football. He wants to shoot hoops. He wants to walk, ride bikes. I love it. And said, you never asked for this kind of shoe or this kind of whatever, because we were having problems just even finding the right clothes for him to wear to do this thing. And he looked at me and he said, Dad, I know we deal with women. I never want anyone to think that I'm a spoiled brat or a spoiled brat. And that just meant so much to me to hear his heart in that. And I thought, I'm far from perfect and don't do a lot of things right, but that's the attitude that he has that I feel really blessed. I remember it was an Inc. 500, 1,000 event, and Brene Brown was there. And she said she had a breakout session. And there were lots of really cool breakout sessions, and everyone was in this session with the shame and vulnerability expert. She said, hey, we're here at Inc. Like, a lot of successful people in the room. How many here are worried about your kids being entitled? And everyone that was a parent raised their hand.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm going to tell you something. She said, every one of your kids is privileged, and you can't change that. They're privileged in the fact that they're probably going to be exposed to different kinds of conversations. You might drive a nicer car. You've got businesses. There's just certain things they're going to have access to that everybody else doesn't have access to. The difference between being privileged and entitled is a heart of gratitude. And as she unpacked that, you just saw grown adults, just tears in their eyes, just thinking about that spirit of gratitude. And I can say Christian, Mateo, Colin, I love it. They all have such a spirit of gratitude. Okay?
That's awesome.
You go buy him a taco at Taco Bell. It's, hey, thank you for the taco. It's just, we got to feed you, but it's just nothing's expected. And it carries through with the peers and others are very grateful coaches, people in school. So I try to really go back to roots of how much gratitude I have for my parents, how much we've overcome, how far we've come, the struggles we've gone through and still made it through and overcome. It's a fulfilling cycle when you live in a spirit like that.
So walk me through some of the more difficult times. Like what are some of the biggest struggles and maybe some of the biggest, let's say, screw ups that you did as a dad that you had to go in and fix, and how did you go through and fix that?
Yeah, biggest, especially like blending families, right? That's always difficult, and realizing and appreciating other people's gifts and talents, kids like in different backgrounds, right? So Christian's an amazing young man. He's not into sports and a lot of the same things that Colin are. But the kid can go light up any room and just take it over. Like he's such a gregarious personality. He's amazing. And he's found his way in acting, and he's working with acting coaches and like doing really well. Some of my screw ups, I would say, would be like initially being more distant from that, not knowing how to connect. And so just not participating or really engaging in conversations, because it's just, you don't even know where to start, right? It's like, where do I start in a conversation? And then for Colin, it's, hey, if I've lost my temper driving or on a call or something, just say, hey, you know what? Dad didn't handle that right. And apologizing for those things. Another piece was, I went back to Colin. This was actually last year. He was listening in on one of the BizDad&x calls, and the guy was talking about just his dad had been such a high achiever, and like he was such big shoes to fill. For us, it's just natural. Like to me, it's just, I just wake up and that's just who I am. Like people say stuff that probably just doesn't make sense. I don't know how you do all you do. So I just do. It's just what you do. It doesn't seem that difficult. It's just, you just do it. But I looked at Colin and I said, do you feel like that sometimes? Do you feel like I don't recognize like the standards I'm setting and whatever? And he goes, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He said, it's hard. He says, it's actually really intimidating, Dad. I wish I'd asked that question years earlier, right? Because how much more has he not opened up or could have shared? And so now I'm more intentional about, hey, am I doing anything intimidating or the standards? And I look back, I was a punk kid, man. I was on probation for assault and battery. I'd been in so many fights in 8th grade. Unfortunately, I turned it around in high school and I did well, but that was a little hell. This kid But meanwhile, it's like, hey, why did you do that? Why didn't you take that proactive step of asking the teacher if you could come in ahead or whatever? It's because he's 8.
Yeah.
I was doing that when I was 8. So I think trying to expect them to live to a standard of where it's taken me 44 years to get. And it's weird. I said, it's weird being an adult and feeling like you're just figuring out how to be an adult.
Yeah.
But yet we're putting all these expectations, but we don't realize the wake that we make sometimes. To me, I'm just me. Like the kid that didn't grow up with a lot, cover road, and I'm in the game a lot. I feel very blessed, but I'm just an authentic, transparent. From the outside looking in, yeah, I have a lot of things and access to things and very blessed. And that's not normal for everybody. But they're seeing that. They're hanging out with other kids who that's not normal, but they feel like they can easily feel like they're less than because they're not living up to these expectations. And they're hearing they're living a lot of the wins that you've accumulated, right? That's probably my biggest screw up. It's not being intentional and setting the bar too high.
Yeah.
And over especially this last year and a half, really relaxing. And God, it's so much more free. It's freeing for him. It's freeing for me. And he's doing just fine.
I try to remind myself of that in the moments where Rory's having a meltdown or is feeling really needy and wants to hold my hand, but it's inconvenient because I'm trying to cook breakfast. I need both hands. Just 2 podcasts a couple weeks ago, Alex Hormozy was being interviewed, and he's never found practice that he does sometimes. He imagines himself as his 85-year-old self looking back at his life in the now present moment and just thinking, I would give nothing. I would give everything if I were being. He's thinking about, I'm like, giving all away right now. Just like have Rory just want to hold my hand right now. Yeah. Or don't wake me up in the middle of the night. She needs to cuddle at 3 a.m. And now sleep sucks that night, but I get to cuddle. Yeah, I try to remember that we're going to look back at today and say, wow, those were the glory days. Like those were the good old days. And so try to live with the mindset of we're in the good old days right now. There's going to be some frustrating times. Going to be a lot of patience that's tested, but we're in the good old days. Like you only get such a limited amount of time with your kids, and just, man, live it up every day. I just feel like we have such cool responsibility on our shoulders that we should just take advantage of that to pour into our kids, into our marriage, and to the people that we lead with such intention. I'm just thankful for that. And so I just really want to encourage everyone that being intentional as a dad is really important. Being intentional as a husband is super important. And then being intentional as a business leader of people is important as well. A lot of crossover characteristics and a lot of crossover importance. Very much agreed. Yeah, I think and I think it's hard to think about it to your same point while it's happening. But if we could be a good example for our employees, to be a good example for our kids, and cross-collateralize those relationships to make sure that they're seeing what it means to be a good boss, they're seeing what it means to be a good employee, they're seeing what it means to be a good business owner, what it means to be a good Christian, what it means to be a good husband, what it means to be a good dad. One of my mentors that I was able to meet in Australia told me, he said, don't put a limit on the amount of time that God needs to make an impact on your life. Oh yeah. Whether it's a month or a year, like you're really limiting what God can do. Like you're putting God in a box of, oh, he needs all this time. So I just do an encouragement for anybody out there. It's even if it's a short amount of time, don't discount the fact that a lot can happen during that time. So yes, I have found myself, to get back to what you were saying, is have I found myself getting into that mindset of maybe justifying actions. And that's something that I think is really easy to do as a motivated person, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. Getting into that mindset of, I'm doing this so that one day, or I'm doing this so that one day. So I probably fell into that a lot more when I was starting my business, just that 3 years, 2, 3, 4 years of grind mode of like just getting traction, getting the snowball rolling. Probably had easier times justifying it then compared to now. I feel like I have some good systems and really good operations and good people to delegate to help promote this mindset. But it's really easy to get into when putting in the extra time now so that later I have the time to spend time with my kids, or I'm taking this call because I need to make this sale so that I can make the extra commission so that I'll have the money one day to give really big. Or I do. And then realizing with that mindset, you're just moving the goalpost. You're never going to achieve that final goal. And if you keep using that as a way to justify, you're not guaranteed that the money's going to get there. You're not going to be guaranteed that you're going to have the time. And even if you have the money and the time, all the relationships that you neglected on your way there are no longer part of your life. So great, you have time to spend with kids that don't like you because you've been absent, right? So really try to check myself on that mindset. What we've planned to do is already all of the books that we read are like very theologically sound, really great Christian kid books that are diving into. We have a children's adapted Pilgrim's Progress, which is super, super cool. It's like a picture chapter book. And that's Rory's favorite book to read. And it talks about these kids going on a journey and going through struggles and asking for help and just putting the story of Jesus into a journey, a story of a journey. So I think that, and then also just being thoughtful about conversations at home. Right now, that's what I'm trying to prepare myself for, is when my kids get old enough to where I feel like I can have really good, deep conversations like that. Right now, everything in my head is like, in theory, if I do this, or I would like to do this. So a lot of it is what I want to do. I'm holding up a book for those that are listening called Habits of the Household by Justin Early. I don't know. Have you read this, Adam? Have you seen this? It's just doing things like this. If I'm trying to prepare myself on like, how do I bring God into the normal everyday habits of our household, instead of just like, before we eat dinner, we thank God for the food and we say a prayer before we go to bed, and on Sundays we go to church. This is a book that I'd recommend you read, that anybody read. It's the subtitle is Practicing the Story of God in Everyday Family Rhythms. What I like about this is that it's not written by that went to seminary. It's written by a lawyer. The dude with 3 boys that's just in the thick of parenting, and he wrote himself a manual for himself of, okay, here's every part of the day. Waking up, meal times, discipline, screen time, family devotions, marriage, work, play, conversation, and bedtimes. Nice. And this is why those things are important as a family, why it's important to insert God into it. There's some cool ideas on how you can do that. I really love this book. I'm almost done and really suggest it. For this motivating, hey, this is why this is important, but also here's some ideas to do this. So just so the listeners, if anyone's listening to this, the website for those books, Lithos Kids from LTHOS Kids.com, and it's Little Pilgrim's Big Journey, and it's just awesome. Yeah, it's just there was some. All right, so building habits for sure, and showing. So going through the motions, I think is necessary for sure. For me, I'm a huge why kind of guy, and I've trained my kids to ask why a billion times. That's also challenged me to try to figure out why it is I'm doing certain things. Okay, why is it that I'm going through these motions? Like, why are these motions important? And I think that I need to build a good reference point for my kids, for my family, to be able to say, okay, this is actually why, and be able to verbalize it better than I think I can right now. I think that's a constant work in progress to make sure that I'm building the family relationship as it's supposed to be, as God would want it to be. All right, so that's gonna be a really hard stage of parenting for me, is when you get to a stage where your kids start making their own decisions and you allow them to make decisions. Until the point that you've just thrown in some really great seeds in their hearts and on their souls, so they know. So they go off the track. They just know. They know where their value is.
I really don't have any interest in promoting and continuing on. I said, and that goes back, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't want to take off the uniform or come back in to do the same thing in the same environment. I knew I had to offer. So I would say early on, I wasn't very present. Fortunately, the kids were very young at that age. And I would hope didn't notice, but obviously my daughter did. Yeah, at that age. So I was blessed in England, but that was one of the very important things that I made this like transition over this past year. My decision not to have a 9-to-5 or any kind of like specific W-2, and even as I build my business as an entrepreneur, it takes a lot of intentionality to design my schedule, and that's one of the things I've worked on over this past year is to like design my schedule in a way that I can be present as they're getting ready, get to school for the day. You know, my wife a lot of times goes to the gym. I help wake them up, make breakfast, make their lunch if they're student and things like that. And I mentioned before we started recording, I just got back from school. I was volunteering in the school cafeteria today, and to be able to work that kind of stuff into my schedule. And so most of my calls I do during the day, usually once they're out of the house, cool, and try to get them finished before they come home. And that way, when they come home from school, they play out in the street a lot with the neighborhood kids and stuff. And if they're doing that, maybe I'll continue to work on something. But if they come in and say, "Hey, Dad, can we go through the ball in the backyard?" The answer is yes. Right? Like I have nothing which is in the calendar to take away from that. And then so I'm available for their ball games and stuff like that. So it has been shifted. It was a very intentional decision and still something I work on every day to make sure that I stand true to the priorities and what I said I was doing things for. I would say that my son is at the age that he's started to get bigger into sports. So this year he early on had a soccer. So when we were in England, he started playing lots of soccer and stuff at school. They have some, lessons and things like that, but he's just at the age now where really the first organized seasons of soccer, baseball, flag football, and he's very much enjoying that. And when he wants me to play with him, that's often Dad coming in the backyard and throw the ball. And sometimes in that 30-minute session, we do all three, get to work for a little bit and make a switch and things like that. So my daughter she's a little less interested in like team sports. She's a little more artsy. She loves to draw. She reads a lot. And her kind of from a physical thing and stuff is she's gotten into aerial arts, aerial silks and stuff like that since we came back in the past year. And that was interesting. We moved here and had dinner with a friend that I went to school with before the school year started. And then her daughter was doing a similar age and was doing that. That's what exposed my daughter to it. And so we got her into lessons doing that. She's really enjoyed it, which I appreciate too, because it's artistic, but also something like physical, and stuff for her to do. So those are some of the kind of activities and stuff, if you will, that they've really been enjoying over the past year.
What is one area you think you are absolutely crushing it as a dad?
Man, it's actually been a question for my wife. I'm not sure. Like anything.
Now it's time to toot your own horn. Let's hear it.
Yeah. It's always hard to write our own eval and fit rep and stuff in the military, isn't it? So I think right now, and I alluded to this earlier, is one of the things I'm most proud of in the last year is saying yes to my children when they desired my time. And that might seem like very simple and stuff, but certainly, as I mentioned earlier, it was hard in England even at times because I get home from my work. I was trying to build this business. A lot of that was in the evening, and mentally I was thinking I was present with them. My desk was in the corner of the living room, and they're in the living room. I'm like, oh yeah, we're spending time together. But it wasn't quality present time. And so in the last year, also calendar planning and everything like that, right now I really desire to say yes when they ask for my time. And there are some instances in which they asked, and I'm like, man, I really wanted to do X right now, or I have 1,000 things to do. And I think for the most part, I've been good at pausing and not, in a little bit or whatever. Yes, we can go do that right now. And sometimes it's only 15 minutes, whatever they ask me to do. Sometimes it's literally 15 minutes later, the neighborhood kids or whoever are here, and they've shifted gears and doing something else. But I just think that it was very easy for me to say, yeah, I'll do that in a little bit before. And then by the time I was done, I almost celebrate that they found something else to do so that I could continue to work. And I think that mental shift for me to say yes 90+% of the time when I can is something I think is important that I'm doing pretty well at the moment.
That's awesome. Yeah, extremely difficult thing to do, especially when you're the type of person who's wanting to be productive and get your business done and go through all the stuff. And so what kind of tips would you give a dad out there that is struggling with that to help them ease that concern and try to and actually be able to execute and saying yes to their kids?
Yeah, and it's hard. I think we've talked about a lot of different aspects of that. I think one thing is the mental thing for me. Sometimes it's been like literally like reading some books. The family board meeting, like when you mentally think, man, I only have 18 years type of stuff, or when we look at statistics, the percentage of how much time we spend in those first 18 years with our kids versus like after that. And so often, as we mentioned earlier, some entrepreneurs say, hey, I'm doing this for the family. But by the time this is where we want it to be, they're gone and out of the house. And so am I really going to get to enjoy whatever it is I'm trying to achieve in the business and stuff with them if they're already gone? So some of it might, depending on where people are, what they have already done and stuff, it might be some education or reminders from that perspective. Some of it could be joining, I think, the tribes like we're in with other men that are, in my opinion, pretty high performing individuals that have likely went through some of the same challenges, right? I think that a lot of times we keep it to ourselves or we voice a bit, man, when we're in these tribes, like a lot of these men have gone through or are going through similar things. And I think that has been really impactful for me this past 18 months or so as well, because it's not just like you go read a book and okay, 95% of the time, it's this continuous cycle of every week we're having conversations and we're going to drift. But one of those men are going to make a comment or check us a little bit and bring us back, where they're going to say, like, hey, you said saying yes to your children was a priority. But why aren't you saying yes to your children? As we talk through this, a lot of those, like joining tribe with other men might be one of the most important tips I could probably give, because all these other things that I'm thinking about, like designing the calendar and all of that kind of stuff, those are the types of things that the men can check you on a little bit as you're having those continuous conversations.
When I had my son come running up to me, taking the daddy, don't leave again. And to me, I tie that back oftentimes to my why. To me, that is like those kids, that face that I never want to see again is why. That's why I'm going to go say yes right now. That's why I'm going to go walk out the door. That's why I don't stop them from coming into the podcast. That's why I want to make sure I'm always there. So if I can replay that face in my brain again and go, no, this is why, and I can tie that to something, that's why I'm writing this down on my calendar. That's why I'm starting this podcast. That's why I'm having this conversation with Marcus, because I don't want to see that face again.
That's awesome.
But man, it's awesome, but man, does it hurt.
Well, I agree. But yeah, it's awesome that you had something identified that's that strong to be able to hold you to it and to be able to recognize that. And I think that alone is a step further than I would be making up a percent if I said, but a vast majority of men, too often we take the traditional answer. Like everyone says, I'm doing it for my family. Most people say I'm doing it for my family or whatever. But as you mentioned, you're like, what tangibly? And when you have something that's that tangible to be able to describe, or for me, and like I said, we had similar circumstances, but also like recognizing the memories and things that we had in my own use, and a lot of them didn't require a lot of money and other things, like good memories, because our family was present together. And to make sure there's stuff from my own upbringing, stuff that drives some of that desire to be present with them on a regular basis.
I don't want to always be running away from what I missed so that I can be running towards what I think they need, but more I want to run towards them all the time and what they actually need, not versus what I think they need. So it's a conversation that needs to be had with the kids too on or it's not like what do you actually need out of me as a dad? That's not what I mean by the conversation. More like understanding who they are as a human being and what it is that drives them. What kind of things do they feel is love, and what kind of things do they feel mean something to them that I can provide? And I think that's going to make a big difference.
It's interesting. You can joke around about that, like not being a conversation, but you might be surprised. Sometimes if you just ask, maybe not what do you need of me as a dad, but maybe it's how do you think I'm doing as a dad, right? I mean, kids will be blatantly honest. We had to be prepared again for that reception. Like they might say something that we didn't see coming or don't really want to hear, but they'll be honest a lot of times. And I think we can probably filter some stuff if it's, we don't buy them all the toys in the world that they want, but there might also be some pretty valuable, something they say that is pretty valuable that we don't forget, we can assign some action to it to address that. It might be something we're not doing that they would love for us to do with them. I 100% think it's important for them to see us make mistakes and realize that they do. And so some of the reasons I think that is my daughter specifically is a bit of a perfectionist in many ways.
Don't I understand that?
Yeah. And I'm sure she comes by it honestly from her parents and the way that we approach things or things that we say and stuff. And so we probably didn't have an appreciation for that sometimes, but throughout her school and stuff, we have been told she does great work, but she's very slow at doing the work sometimes. Or she gets upset if she's drawing something, there's one like little slither pen over here or whatever, like where she's like, oh, I'll just make something new with it now. But for a long time, it's like, no, it's not perfect. I'm going to throw that away and start over. And even other things, like when maybe there was a little bit of a disagreement or something like that, comments that she made about like, it's my fault, like her saying that about herself because of X or Y. And so I just think it's important for us to reveal, hey, I make a mistake too. I tried to do things like there's times maybe I raise my voice or something. And what I realized after is like, they didn't do anything wrong. Like I was in a bad moment. And so I used to be like, I don't have to go apologize. I don't have to say anything. And I had a different mindset about that now. Like I'll go back to them and say, hey, I apologize for raising my voice, for yelling. I was really upset about something totally different. And you just happen to be in the wrong place at that point in time. And I think when we come and apologize in those kind of situations, they understand that like we make mistakes in different ways. It gives them a little bit more, there's a lot of pressure on her, right? If she thinks she has to be perfect about everything. And I think that as they get older and stuff, that can be a dangerous route. I think they have to be perfect and don't understand that it's okay to make mistakes so that we can recover for them. And some of the consequences might be for them not understanding that.
I think in the military and in a lot of W-2s and a lot of defined role jobs, you are maximizing for whatever your position is, for whatever like your organization's definition of success is. And David, who does a lot of the kind of deep thinking and writing for Connect Man, he uses this phrase a lot. What is your definition of success? A lot of people, a lot of men in particular, are living either intentionally or unintentionally somebody else's definition of success, whether that's in the military and your unit's metrics, or whether that's the quote unquote American dream, whatever it is. And so your definition of success is simply maximizing for something different than work efficiency. But most men never get to that point, never get to the point of realizing something like you just said, which is that that's okay. I would rather see my kid walk by the window than accomplish 5 more pages of content writing today, because that's success. And so it's one of the things that I had to learn coming out, again, as part of that detox year, right? Is just, it's okay. This is what I'm here for. I really love it. It's a cliche story analogy, but I do love it. And I go back to it a lot in here mentally, which is the story of the fisherman, right? The fisherman sitting by the side of his boat, playing his guitar. And like a businessman asks him, why are you playing your guitar instead of going out? And he's like, caught everything I needed for the day. You get a bigger boat and then you can catch more fish and then you can build a business and have multiple boats and people working for you. And then once you do all that, like you'll be able to retire. And the fisherman basically says like, well, when I retire, I would sit next to my boat playing my guitar. So like that story, which I butchered terribly, really resonates with me. Sitting at home in my home office and trying to get as much done as I can. And there's these passions and businesses that are good and are making solid impacts in the world. But like, really, what am I maximizing for? I'm maximizing for enough for my family. And then the most time and impact I can have on my wife and kids as they grow up. And so I think about that a lot. Yeah. The what are you maximizing for? I think is a phenomenal question that, as you're saying that, I have to think about. And I appreciate it because you just gave me almost a little bit of, I don't know, liberty, I guess we'll say, to enjoy the fact that I'm doing that and not feel guilty about the fact that I'm doing that. Because I've even talked to my business partners about it. Like I had to explain to them, like, I'm going to be homeschooling now. Like, it's not going to be the best thing in the world for the company, right? Because
Right.
I'm using the
This
first
is a
few
poor
hours of every
business
day.
decision.
Bad business decision, yes. But man, is it a great family decision, right? Like
Yeah.
I got to bring my family with me to Philadelphia. I went to Philadelphia a couple months ago. Got to show them where the Constitution was written. Got to show them, walk them around, everything, Liberty Bell, do all the stuff. And then we went over to Atlantic City for some masterminding, and they got to go hang out at a hotel on the beach, swim in the pool, come visit me. We got to have a great time that we would not have been able to do if it wasn't for the fact that we're homeschooling. Same thing with bringing them to San Antonio with me. We did a cross-country trip from Tampa to San Antonio. Yeah, stopping at various different places, get to enjoy the time, not having to worry about it. Yeah.
It's amazing what we imprint onto our kids too. My 3-year-old, he turns 3 in September. So he's just over the hurdle of 3. But man, I can see like the things that he is picking up. They catch everything that you say. They are watching everything. And like the things that you imprint on them are just amazing. And like you're saying, I know that the anxieties that we carry, the burdens that we carry in terms of being efficient, having your phone. A phone is a classic one. That's an easy one, devices. But just like the way that we approach things, I know this is taking a bit of a left turn, but one of the articles I wrote recently was about some language that I have stopped using with my kids. And it's such common language. And I never would have considered this until I heard somebody else say this. And I don't even remember who it was that said this, but they said, stop saying that it's bad weather outside, or that like your kid, like you can't go outside when it's raining, right? Is it really bad weather? There's a saying, right? There's no such thing as bad weather, just incorrect clothing. And that's something that it's just one of those small little things that I thought about that when you were saying that about your kids, that I tell my kids now, hey, it's raining outside, not that, oh, it's bad weather. And so therefore we have to stay inside and it's a moody, gloomy day. No, would you like to go make an amazing day out of this rainy day? Great. Like rain boots and rain jackets and have at it. So those kinds of things that I'm just, as a dad, starting to pick up now, how what I'm doing, I want my kids to live a balanced life. I don't want my son to grow up and be working so hard on a passion project that he's always on his computer after family time, right? That his kids see him doing that and that kind of thing. I heard recently there's going to be a last time that your child is going to ask to go on your shoulder. Right.
There's going to be a last, you don't know when it is.
That could have been the
You
last
don't
time.
know when
You
it
don't know.
is. Exactly. And I looked at him and said, get up here, get on it. It was almost bringing tears to my eyes just walking through wherever we were. I don't know. We didn't even know where we were. Could have been Walmart. I have no idea. Throw him up on my shoulders and just start walking around probably for only 2 or 3 minutes. And then I said, oh, you're too heavy. But you need some help getting the banana open? Really? Yes. Yeah.
There you go, buddy. There's going to be a last time that your kids want to walk around and hold your hand. And,
or open a banana for them.
or open a banana for them. Yeah. So it is so important. And it's good. I need to take that away for myself too. I have thought about it for myself and my wife and the things that sort of we want to do and maybe do with as a family. But my 3-year-old, for whatever reason, him turning 3, I feel like we are hurtling into those years where I need to pay attention to the language I use, or I need to, and I don't mean like poor language, actually. What am I imprinting on him? For whatever reason, his 3-year-old birthday really hit me as, okay, I've been keeping a human being alive, and now I've left that era, and I am entering the era of I am teaching a human being. That for me happened at 3 with him.
Keeping a human being alive versus teaching a human being
and
to live.
imprinting and build a human being up into an adult.
I love it.
I've felt the weight of that on me recently. I've got all these things on my mind.
I'm going to write that down before I forget it.
You know, the one thing that has really it has been weighing on me recently to the point that I have, my wife and I both, we've talked about it and we have started taking intentional action, is our kids seeing us have thriving, healthy friendships as adults. Somebody said something recently in one of our groups that really struck me in that area of, do you want your kids have tons of friends. Like my 3-year-old will run into a playground with a ton of other kids and say, I'm going to see my friends. He's never met these kids before, right? Everyone on that playground is his friend and he is going to meet them to play. And so that's how kids approach life. And somewhere we, especially as men, lose that. And I can't remember who, it may have been Ben Killoy that said that, like,
I'm going to butcher this quote, but the quality of your community and friendships is directly related to the amount of hellos that you say. And it's always struck me because I am the kind of dad that I am perfectly happy standing at a playground with 5 other dads and giving the head nod to them and standing silently and watching my kid, instead of going over and saying hi and whatnot. And so that's one thing that it just made me think about us talking about teaching our kids as they grow up and seeing us do things and what are we imprinting on them. That is a big one for my wife and I. We've had the conversation of, okay, like literally here are our friends. Almost none of them live, especially military, right? Almost none of them live here anymore. Okay, cool. Here are some acquaintances, some decent friends here locally that we do stuff with them once in a while. We should do a lot more with them. Like we should make an active effort to reach out and go to dinner with them and whatnot, like not only for ourselves, but also so that our kids grow up in a home that is full of community and friends and a tribe of people that we have here locally. I don't want, and I think this is totally possible, I don't want my kids to become adults and to say, like all of dad's best friends were the ones that he talked to on the computer and the phone. Because if you look at my day, if you took an audit of my day right now, that is probably what it would tell you.
My 15-year-old is very good, very studious, but it's also a personality thing with him. His personality is way more lax, way more, which is actually, to be honest with you, I'd rather him be that way than the other way. So he lets things go sometimes, but now he himself realizes that he needs to hone his skill of just paying attention a little bit more and not letting certain things go because he'll miss an assignment or this or that. I don't want him to get to the point where he's so anal that he just stops enjoying everything. It's okay. I actually love his personalities, but you still have to keep after them, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. And it's part of it, I think, with my oldest is he is very anal with things and he hates to not get things right. So sometimes I think it's an avoidance thing. Like why even, I don't even want to do it right now because I don't want the stress of having to do it perfectly. Okay, what do I balance? I don't know how to fix that and fix is probably the wrong word, but I don't know how to target that in a positive direction as opposed to a detrimental direction because it can totally tear somebody down if they keep going down that direction. Boy, any advice on that?
Have him do stuff that he can't win at or let him learn how to fail.
Well,
because if he doesn't learn how to fail at this age, when he gets older, it's going to be that much worse.
I will take that note.
You're going to tailor things to his personality, but they need to learn how to fail. Everybody talks about it all the time, but we as parents don't like to see them struggling and things like that. But maybe even start with small things. I don't know, a puzzle that he's going to have a hard time doing and just know that he's going to have a hard time doing it and say, it's okay. If you don't get it right, it's all right. Yeah, we tried for 2 years, not extremely consistently, but Sarah Blakely, I think, Sarah Blakely, the Spanx girl. When she was growing up, her dad used to always ask every day at the dinner table, what did you fail at today? To try to encourage them to fail at something. Go out and fail because that's the only way you're going to learn. Once you're failing forward, you're like, it's okay. So we kept trying to ask him that to encourage that thought process. And he would just look and I didn't kick a soccer ball. Like you're not trying hard enough if that's what you failed. But what I balance. Yeah, to figure out how to make sure that I'm raising strong-willed kids that are willing to fail and move forward versus being bubbled and coddled all the time. What grade is he in? 4th grade?
4th grade, yeah.
Yeah, he'll start coming across things in school that he can't say no to, that he has to do.
Yeah, for sure. So as you're raising your kids right now and you're looking at what kind of things do you look at or even had the chance to even stop and look back how you were raised that is causing you to do certain things right now as a parent?
So I think coming from India, my parents were very fiscally minded because you don't have a lot of money, right? You know that I have to take care of the money that I make. So my parents would literally every weekend, they would write down like their expenses. They would write down their income. They had a budget of this is what they could spend. So I got a sense of budgets and things like that in my mind. And that's what I've instilled on my kids to look at your numbers and obviously know what you have before you go to spend. And the philosophy of telling them that you don't charge them a credit card unless you already have that much in the bank account. And at the end of the month, you pay off the credit card. There's no revolving.
you don't let it roll over. You
Yeah.
know, just telling them those things. I remember that was very big for my parents, like just making sure they're taking care of their financial obligations and setting aside funds.
When I talk to my kids about things that I was really passionate about, they lit up in how they responded back to me in a way that didn't happen before. And I was really surprised and shocked at how much my kids lit up in response to me when I finally shared things that I was passionate about that I wanted to do. They became my greatest cheerleaders. They became my greatest advocates in a way that really overwhelmed me. Because as a dad, sometimes you think your kids don't even pay attention to what you do. But you're the old guy, right? So they don't even know. They're consumed by their friends. They're consumed by their worlds. They're consumed by the drama that's going on in school. But they really do pay a lot of attention to us and what's going on. Usually we just don't open up that box.
Yeah.
Really pour into our kids. And then we're surprised when we do, they actually bring it back to us. At least that was my experience. So it took me longer than I wanted to, but I wish I would have explored that much earlier. But I had my own issues where I was pretending to be this guy over here. And if you're pretending to be something in your career and in your life and things like that, it's really hard to be authentic with your kids. And they probably won't even think you're being authentic because they probably know that's not really you anyway. At least my kids did. It took me a while until I got to that level, and then my kids mirrored it back to me. And it was amazing. It was overwhelming how great it felt.
It's awesome. Maybe write down, like, where are you pretending? Trying to analyze in my life, and hopefully anybody listening can analyze in their life. Where are they pretending to be somebody they're not? That's my intent, because I know that I'm still missing the boat on some of these things. How have you yet to have some conversations now with your kids the age they are, between 19 and 25, where like you can really make a huge impact on their future growth by helping them work through that now? What kind of conversations are you having with your kids to go through that?
Yeah. So my wife and I talked about this magical age her kids got where they were the same age that we were when we had them. So our 25, our 23, and our 22 have all reached this age where all of a sudden they were the same age that we were when we had them. And it's like this crazy dynamic where all of a sudden they realize, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I'm the same age you guys were when you had me. And it changes this perspective, this paradigm shift, where they have this enormous amount of understanding and compassion for us of parenting, how hard it would be for them right now to have a child.
No kidding.
And it opened up these great conversations with our kids where we felt like we could be vulnerable with them and they would receive it about, yeah, it was really hard. It was so hard. You can imagine now what it'd be like having a newborn. Like, they're like, no, couldn't do it. Not even close. I can't believe you guys did this. Yeah, we went through it. It was hard. And now you could understand how difficult it was for us. So it gave them an understanding, and it let us start to open up about, but we made 1,000 mistakes, probably every day. But nobody else could have been your parents. Nobody else is going to take that job. We did absolutely the best we could, even though we made a bunch of mistakes. It was hard. We failed. We were there. We tried. We jumped in. And it really gave our kids a healthy respect for that. So that opened up a new level. I don't think if you got a kid who's 12 now, that you got to wait another 10 years before you get to that point. But it certainly helps. But when you're in the fight and you're just trying to make all those decisions, and half the time they might be wrong, half the time they might be right. The thing that I would tell my younger self is, don't get caught up in the wrong or the right. Just be there, make the decision, do what you think is best for your kid. Your kid's probably not, they're probably going to give you negative feedback. By the way, it has no correlation to whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing.
Yeah.
The feedback you're getting, because half the time you're doing the right thing and the feedback's negative. That doesn't mean it's right or wrong. So just get in, do the work, be there. Eventually, they will have perspective and it will make sense and they will come back. It might be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Wait for the result. Don't be disparaged because you're not seeing the feedback right now.
I love that. I said, wait for the result. Don't wait for the conversation. Have the conversation now. Go through it.
The measure of success is when you're in the fight with a parent is not what
makes your kids happy. It's not
Mhm.
what feel like their friend. We have a job to do. We have a mission. You got to put the mission first or the mission's going to fail. And the mission is the growth, the health, and the safety of the kids. So many times their happiness, their feelings about you come at a conflict of that mission. They're the opposite of that mission. So you got to choose which mission you're going to protect. Are you going to protect the growth, the health, and the safety of your kids? Are you going to cave in to what makes them happy or what makes them your friend and jeopardize that mission? And to me, that was the hardest thing as a dad. And I actually I used those words with my kids. And I learned this as I was going through my grit journey. So I used this when I was a more developed father, is when I was doing survival events and multi-day endurance events, I was taught the value of understanding the mission and placing the mission first. And if you make some choices, they will take you in the opposite direction from accomplishing that mission. You can't afford that many. And I used that terminology with my kids when we were at an impasse and when they didn't like me and when they didn't understand my decisions or when they fought my decisions. And I just said, this is the mission as a father, which you have no other father in the world. And my mission is your growth, your health, and your safety. And that's my job. Even when you don't like it, even when you don't agree, I'm not going to change the mission. And now they come back and they say, yeah, I didn't like that, but I knew that you loved me. And I think that's the thing I want my kids to know is when they didn't like me, they knew that they were loved. I think that's the greatest thing we can do as a parent.